I spoke art before I spoke that. So I got into this creativity business as a matter of convenience. I quite frankly had no reason getting into this. If anything, if I had taken time out to think about it, I probably wouldn't have gotten myself into this mess because it has brought me nothing but shame, pain, and every form of suffering under the sun. The thing is, if I had different friends or more normal youthful interests, I would totally have done other things. But I had one friend with whom I spent all my free time. And my friend loved clothes so much. He went thrifting in Gikomba Subui and then sold the clothes to a handful of his clients. And then would spend the whole rest of the day eating that money. He's the first person I saw wearing vintage clothing from the 60s and 80s so well and so effortlessly that I started buying clothes from him and became his number one customer and fan. After a while, I had this idea. Why don't we take pictures of you in these nice clothes and people can get to see how stylish you are and maybe make a few new customers? And that's how our street style photography was birthed. But the thing is, we didn't just take nice photos. I always felt a need to have a story that went along with the images. And I really enjoyed writing those small pieces of stories. At the time, I didn't consider myself a writer. I honestly didn't even believe my writing was any good. The stories felt like something that gave us an edge. And whenever I wrote, no one ever really complained. And then the idea, this thing that we had started became bigger and bigger by the day, and we started making a bit of money and then a whole lot of money. And then suddenly this small, beautiful thing that I loved so much started feeling like work. And my friend, who was the coolest person I knew, started becoming less and less cool. And one day I quit everything and left. I mean left. I changed cities. Nilitoka Nairobi nikaenda Ushago. And then the next 2 years I spent looking after chicken and sold chipo and smokies in my small cave. These were fun times, I won't lie. Lots of laughs and new life lessons. But deep down I was sad. I felt completely lost and purposeless. When I was overwhelmed by emotions, I picked up a pen and began writing. I just wrote and let the pen cry for me. These things I wrote, I had no intention of putting them into any use. Remember, I didn't even think of myself as being good enough, let alone consider my stuff worth sharing. I just wrote because that was the only option available. I had no friends, no internet, no phone, and more fundamentally, now that I know how to describe that feeling, I wrote because that was the only thing that made me feel alive. For the few minutes or sometimes hours I would spend writing, I would completely forget reality and would thoroughly enjoy the pleasure out of those stories I was scribing and the possibilities that those ideas presented. One morning, I woke up, gave out the cave and all the chickens with their hatched and unhatched eggs, and came back to Nairobi. Time had robbed me of the only thing that I loved and the only thing that mattered, creating. And I had returned with vengeance. I knew that I had to create something bigger and better, and by God, I was going to. I picked 5 concepts out of the stories I had written and set out to put a team that would bring them to life. And behold, we made beautiful images and memories. But after some time, these projects started feeling easy. You know, like you have a good team, a wealth of stories to tell, but the medium, photography in this case, seemed incomplete. The frame felt inadequate. And then we sat down and examined our work and realized one thing. We were not photographers. What we were doing was not photography. we had been making stealth films. We were simply restricted by our resources. And right there and then, the bulb went on. And we knew exactly what our next move should and ought to be. Film. As I make this video, it's exactly 3 years later. We quickly found out that the film business in this country is a tricky affair and an expensive one. Tried working with a few notable names in the industry, wrote a few scripts and a bunch of proposals, nothing. It's crystal clear that in this game, you're not judged by the content of your mind and worth of your ideas, but the content of your contact list and worth of those phone numbers. And this show is our response to that. Fuck that shit. See you on the next one.